The morning I found out I was going to receive $3 million was the same morning I learned that my husband of 31 years had already decided he was done with me. I want you to sit with that for a moment. 31 years. I gave that man the best decades of my life. I raised his children, kept his home, worked double shifts at the hospital for 11 years before my knees gave out, and stood beside him through two business failures, a bankruptcy, and the kind of grief that breaks most marriages. I did all of that, and on the very morning the universe finally decided to hand me something back, I walked through my own front door and heard him on the phone saying, "She doesn't suspect anything. I'll be out by the end of the month." I was 63 years old, standing in my own hallway, holding a certified letter from an attorney's office, and my entire world cracked straight down the middle. But here's what my husband never understood about me, not in 31 years of marriage. I don't cry in the moment. I never have. My mother raised me in rural Georgia with nothing but grit and the good sense to think before you speak. When the pain hits me, something goes very quiet inside. My hands stop shaking. My mind gets sharp as glass, and I start to plan. So I did not make a sound. I folded that letter back into the envelope, tucked it into my purse, and walked back out the front door as quietly as I had come in. My husband didn't even know I'd been home. Let me back up, because you need to understand what that letter was and where it came from. My older sister, Ruth, had passed away 14 months earlier. We weren't close in the way people imagine sisters should be. We lived in different states, called on holidays, exchanged cards. But Ruth had never married, had no children, and had spent 40 years working as a contract engineer for an oil company in Houston. She was quiet about money the way our mother had taught us to be. Didn't talk about it, didn't flaunt it. When she died, I flew down for the funeral, helped settle what I could, and came home. I knew she'd named me in her will, but I assumed it was jewelry, maybe some savings. Ruth had never mentioned numbers. The attorney's letter informed me that after taxes, the estate settlement, and the sale of her property and investment portfolio, my inheritance came to $2,940,000. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a Walgreens 2 blocks from my house and read that letter 4 times. Then I thought about what I had heard my husband say on the phone. She doesn't suspect anything. I'll be out by the end of the month. I put the car in drive and went straight to the one person I trusted more than anyone on earth. My daughter, Camille, was at work when I showed up at her office door. She took one look at my face and told her assistant to hold everything. I sat down across from her, placed the letter on her desk, and said, "Read this first. Then I'll tell you what I heard this morning." She read it. Her eyes went wide. Then I told her about the phone call. I watched my daughter's expression move through shock, then fury, then, and this is what I love most about her, pure, focused calm. "Mom," she said, "does he know about this letter?" "No." "Does anyone know?" "Just the attorney, and now you." She folded her hands on the desk. "Then no one else finds out." "Not yet." That was the moment I knew exactly what kind of woman I had raised. My husband's name is Gerald. I want you to know his name because for 31 years I made him sound like a good man when I talked about him to other people. I covered for his moods, explained away his coldness, told myself that all long marriages go through dry spells. I defended him at family dinners when my brother said he seemed selfish. I defended him to Camille when she was 19 and told me point blank that he didn't treat me right. I was a nurse for 22 years. I spent my career reading people, assessing situations, making fast decisions under pressure, and yet I spent 3 decades refusing to read the man sleeping next to me. The woman on the phone, I found out later, was someone he'd met at his gym. She was 38 years old. He was 66. She called him her life plan. I only know this because when the time came, I knew exactly where to look. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first thing Camille and I did was find an attorney, not the one handling Ruth's estate, a different one entirely. A woman named Patricia who specialized in divorce and asset protection, and who had, according to the reviews online, a reputation for being absolutely merciless in mediation. I sat in her office on a Tuesday afternoon while Gerald thought I was at my water aerobics class, and I told her everything: the inheritance, the phone call, 31 years of marriage, the mortgage on the house that was only in his name because he'd insisted on handling the financial side of things, my social security, my small retirement from the hospital. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her pen and said, "Mrs. Coleman, the most important thing you can do right now is nothing. Do you understand me? Absolutely nothing that signals any change." I told her I understood completely. She helped me set up a separate bank account at a branch across town. The inheritance would be transferred there in stages, handled entirely through Ruth's attorney and mine, with no connection to any joint account Gerald could see. It was legal, it was clean, and it was completely invisible to him. I went home that evening and made his favorite dinner: pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon. He came in from wherever he'd been, sat down, and talked for 20 minutes about a problem with one of his investment properties while I listened and nodded and passed him the rolls. That night, I lay in the dark beside him and thought, 30 days. Here is something no one tells you about keeping a secret like that. It is both the hardest and the easiest thing you will ever do. It's hard because there are moments, just ordinary moments, him laughing at something on television or calling you from the other room to ask where his jacket is, where you feel the weight of everything you know pressing against the back of your teeth. You want to say it, not out of anger, but almost out of grief, because you are mourning something while it's still standing right in front of you. But it's easy because the secret gives you power. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I had something in my life that was entirely mine. A plan that no one could interfere with. A future I was building quietly, one careful step at a time. During those 30 days, I did a lot of things Gerald didn't know about. I had the house appraised quietly by a friend of Patricia's. I met with the financial advisor Camille had found, a woman who specialized in working with women over 50 who were starting over. I made a list of every shared asset I could document. I kept records of Gerald's schedule, not obsessively, just carefully. Dates, times, patterns. Patricia said documentation was everything. I also started looking at apartments, not desperately, not frantically, calmly. The way you shop when you don't need anything yet, but you want to know what's available. I found one on the fourth floor of a building near Camille's office. Big windows, a little balcony, a second bedroom I thought I'd use for my sewing. I put down a deposit on a Tuesday morning while Gerald was at the gym, probably with her. But that wasn't my concern anymore. The conversation happened on a Saturday. I had decided on a Saturday because Gerald was always more relaxed on weekends, less defensive. He'd had his coffee, he'd read his news. The day was easy around him. I wanted him calm. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted him fully present for every word I was about to say. I sat down across from him at the kitchen table and I said, "Gerald, I need to talk to you about something." He looked up from his phone with that familiar half attention he'd given me for years. "What's up?" "I know about her," I said. The color left his face in a way I had never seen before. In 31 years, I had never seen Gerald Coleman at a loss. He was always the one with the answer, the explanation, the redirect. He could talk his way out of or into anything. It was one of the things I had once admired about him. He opened his mouth, closed it. "I heard you on the phone," I said, 6 weeks ago. "I came home early and you didn't hear me come in." I kept my voice completely even. "I've spent the last 6 weeks getting my affairs in order. I've spoken with an attorney. I've made arrangements. I'm not here to fight with you, Gerald. I'm here to tell you that I'm leaving, and I want to make sure we both understand what that means." He found his voice then. He said my name. He said he could explain. He said it wasn't what I thought, that she was just a friend, that he'd been going through something, and he hadn't known how to talk to me about it. I listened to all of it. I let him say every word. And when he was finished, I said, "I also need to tell you something else. My sister left me an inheritance. I've already spoken with an attorney about how it will be handled in our settlement. None of it will be considered a marital asset. I've had 3 separate legal opinions confirming that." The second silence was different from the first, harder. I could see him doing the math behind his eyes, how long we'd been married, what he'd expected to happen when things ended, what he'd counted on. "How much?" he asked. And I want you to notice that that was his question. Not "are you okay?" Not "I'm sorry." How much? "That's between me and my attorney," I said. I stood up, picked up my coffee cup, rinsed it in the sink, and told him I'd be staying with Camille for the next few days while he made arrangements. Patricia had advised me to give him the opportunity to vacate voluntarily before we moved to the next step. It was cleaner that way. I went upstairs, warms, picked up the bag I had packed 3 days earlier, and walked out of that house with my head up. I wish I could tell you he handled it with dignity. I wish I could tell you that 31 years of shared history counted for something in those final weeks. Instead, he called me 14 times the first night. He called Camille, who did not answer. He called my son-in-law, who told him politely but firmly that this wasn't something he could involve himself in. He drove past Camille's building twice. She has a doorman, who noted both visits. Then he called his own attorney. What followed was several weeks of negotiation that I will not take you through in detail because honestly, it is tedious, and my attorney handled most of it beautifully. What I will tell you is this. Gerald had spent years managing our finances in a way that he believed left him in full control. What he hadn't counted on was that I had been watching all of it, quietly, for a long time. I knew where the accounts were. I knew about the second property he'd bought in his brother's name. I knew about the business receipts that weren't entirely what they appeared to be. Patricia knew what to do with all of it. What Gerald had expected, I believe this sincerely, was that I would fall apart. That a 63-year-old woman with creaky knees and a part-time nursing consulting job would crumble without him, would settle for whatever he offered just to make the process stop. He had been married to me for 31 years, and he did not know me at all. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday morning in March. It was cold, and the courthouse parking lot had patches of ice on it, and I wore my good gray coat and my mother's pearl earrings. Camille sat next to me. My son Marcus drove 4 hours from Cincinnati to be there, which I had told him wasn't necessary, but I was more grateful for it than I'll ever fully say. When it was done, Patricia shook my hand in the hallway and said, "You were the easiest client I've had in years. You never panicked." I told her my mother hadn't raised me to panic. I moved into the apartment with the big windows on a Saturday in April. Camille and Marcus helped me carry boxes. My granddaughter, who is 7, ran from room to room, narrating everything she discovered as though she were a nature documentary host. There was a moment, all of us sitting on the floor eating pizza from the box because I didn't have chairs yet, when I looked around at those 3 faces and thought, this is not an ending. This is the first day of something. I had worried, in those early weeks after I heard that phone call, that the grief would swallow me. And there is grief. I want to be honest about that. You don't spend 31 years with someone and walk away clean. You grieve the person you thought they were. You grieve your own blindness a little. You grieve the years you spent defending them to the people who loved you and could see clearly what you couldn't. But grief and regret are different things, and I have very little regret. What I have instead is a Tuesday afternoon last September, sitting on my little balcony with a glass of sweet tea, watching the light change over the building across the street, and realizing that I felt, for the first time in longer than I could remember, entirely like myself. Last month, I got a call from an old colleague of mine who runs a small home health agency. She's looking to expand into 2 new counties, and she wants a partner, someone with clinical background, administrative experience, and enough capital to help get the operation off the ground. I have a meeting with her next Thursday. My attorney is already reviewing the partnership terms. My daughter says I should call the agency something bold. My granddaughter suggested we name it after a flower. I'm thinking about it. What I know for certain is this: I am 63 years old. I have everything I need, and I am just getting started. Gerald, by the way, is living in a 1-bedroom apartment across town. I heard from Marcus that the woman from the gym decided she wasn't interested once the financial picture became clear. I can't say I was surprised. What I can say is that when I close my eyes at night now, in my apartment with the big windows and the little balcony and my sewing room down the hall, I feel nothing but peace. My mother always told me, still water runs deep, baby. Let them underestimate you. It's the most powerful thing in the world. She was right. She always was. If you're out there right now carrying something heavy, something you haven't told anyone yet, something that cracked your world open when you weren't ready, I want you to know that the crack is where the light gets in. Take your time, think clearly, trust yourself. And whatever you do, don't let them see you coming.